Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Indie Alaska is a groundbreaking series that dives into the lives of people living in the last frontier. Each episode introduces you to colorful characters from around the state. Funding for Indie Alaska is provided in part by Alyeska Pipeline Service Company. Catch the latest episodes at alaskapublic.org.
It's never too early to set expectations and goals for your child's education. The UA College Savings Plan provides opportunities that can help you reach your educational savings goals. Save in Alaska. Study anywhere. There is more information available by calling 1-888, the number 4, and then Alaska. This message sponsored by the UA College Savings Plan.
The National Weather Service.
Hello again, everyone, and thanks for joining us here at KAKM for Monday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting tonight's show. Up on the satellite here of the Northwest Pacific, big low pressure area spinning southeast of Kamchatka Peninsula, and that front bringing some gusty winds and rain into the western Aleutian areas. Then you can see the other system out here south of the Alaska Peninsula, the front moving northward. And then back to the west, another system here over Manchuria cutting eastward eventually is going to move into the Northwest Pacific with the front trailing back across the Sea of Japan. On the goes west imagery here, you can see clear skies across the southeast coast, and with partly sunny conditions here over the eastern interior from the Copper River Basin up to the upper Yukon. A lot of thick mid and high level clouds, cirrus here coming across the central interior down to the Kenai Peninsula. And then the main rain producing area of this cloud band is down across Kodiak Island and westward in over Bristol Bay, the Alaska Peninsula over to the eastern Aleutians and on up to the Pribilofs. Not much in the way of precipitation falling over the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta areas, but snow up here over the north central interior areas, and then looks like some clearing there from St. Lawrence Island southward to St. Matthew Island, and then that low centered here just to the southeast of the Alaska Peninsula, and then this front here going into another low pressure area there south of the central Aleutians. On the chart today, there's that low 983 millibars edging its way northward toward the central Aleutians, but the main rain area back here to the west with the gusty southeast winds. And a trough here bringing some rain and snow up over the Nulato Hills area and the lower Yukon Valley, and some light snow extending up into the Koyukuk, possibly the Kobuk Valley there, with some snow showers from the northern Koyukuk Valley back over the northwest interior. Up along the Arctic coast, winds are generally light here along the central and west coast with some areas of flurries and patchy fog up in that area. But winds picked up here around Point Hope, gusting up to 30 miles an hour out of the northeast, and pretty good winds gusting 35 to 45 miles per hour with gale warnings here for the Kodiak Island area, and rain moving northward, a few scattered showers clipping the southern Kenai Peninsula areas, but mostly just mid and high level clouds over the interior, and then all the sunshine here down across the southeast coast. And moving ahead to tonight, we'll see that front doesn't move too far to the north, so that keeps the gradient here right across Kodiak Island. So there are storm warnings out for tonight for the Barren Islands and Kamishak Bay, gales for Kodiak Island, and also storm warnings out tonight and tomorrow for Shelikof Strait, possibly reaching 50 knots on those winds. High pressure over western Canada here, keeping the southeast coast under its domain for mostly clear weather and generally light winds, and that extends up over the southeast interior. Then up to the north, we've got an area of light snow here from Canada extending back across the upper Yukon Valley, over about as far west as the AKwx Valley there. Another patch of snow, light snow or flurries there up over the west central north slope areas down to the Brooks Range. And yet another zone here over the Seward Peninsula, possibly up to Buckland and Selawik and those areas. But again, amounts not too much there, just again, light snow or flurries. And then rain here continuing out across the Pribilof Island areas. A fair amount of rain falling with this front today, with about 1/4 of an inch today at St. George Island. Unalaska had 1/2 inch, and even heavier amounts along the Alaska Peninsula, with False Pass picking up just under 1 inch of rain, and then Chignik picked up 2 1/4 inches of rain in the last 24 hours. And again, that area of rain will shift more to the north as it becomes showery back across the Alaska Peninsula. A lot of showers and rain here with that low south of the central Aleutians all the way back to Shimei and Attu. And for tomorrow, that front finally swings up to near Kodiak Island, but still gale force winds in the forecast across that area out into the Gulf of Alaska. And southeast winds increase to about 30 knots along the southeast coast there, but should stay fair. Just some variable clouds along the coast, mostly sunny over much of the Panhandle, back in across the Copper River Basin. Partly sunny weather is forecast for south central Alaska. We're looking at areas of snow again up over the northeast interior, trailing back to the south through the Koyukuk Valley and onto the southwest there, and also up over the Brooks Range and the eastern north slope and Arctic coast. Could pick up a little bit of snow tomorrow, but good easterly winds offshore flow, making it partly cloudy conditions there for the western Arctic coast, right down into Kotzebue Sound, the northwest interior. Also for Norton Sound, a dry day with some variable clouds for the Seward Peninsula, and then snow showers out over the far western Bering Sea. Pretty good northeast winds here from the southwest coast and the northern Bering all the way down across and into the Aleutians in the 35 gust 50-mile-per-hour range. Windy and wet. Most of the rainfall here will be right along the coastline of the Yukon Delta down into Bristol Bay. Alaska Peninsula still kind of rainy, but not as heavy as it was, drying out over the western peninsula there. And the Pribilof still in the rain shield with occasional rain, gusty winds there. And again, a couple of low centers keeping it rainy and showery from Unalaska all the way out to Amchitka Island. And again, clouds increasing over the southeast coast. And it looks like this front will push in across the area tomorrow night. And on Wednesday, got another trough that catches up to it. So it looks like rain and gusty winds. Still got small craft advisories along the coast for Wednesday, with rain from the Queen Charlottes all the way up into Lynn Canal and back to the west to about Yakutat. And this is the remnants of the first front that rotates northeastward here, bringing rain to the North Gulf Coast tomorrow night. And a chance of showers here south central Alaska into the Copper River Basin, and a narrow band of precipitation extending southwest there into northern Bristol Bay and on down toward this low center. So kind of a wet day with probably IFR conditions for the eastern Aleutians. Scattered showers up toward the Pribilof with pretty gusty northeast winds, mostly dry and on the cool side here over the Seward Peninsula, northern Bering Sea areas, with partly to mostly sunny skies in over the western north slope. Still some light snow shower conditions or flurries here over the Yukon Valley, maybe even the eastern Arctic coast, but nothing that'll amount to very much at all. A lot of showers and strong winds, gale force winds, looking at north winds 40 knots here for the western Aleutians, and then diminishing as you head eastward in toward Adak and Atka, and even lighter winds for the eastern Aleutians right under that low center. And still another trough here that'll swing into the southern southeast coast probably Wednesday night. Looking at temperature there across the Panhandle, upper 40s to mid 50s, 47 at Juneau, but Skagway 55 degrees. That temperature matched down at Annette with 50 at Yakutat. Lower to mid 40s here for the North Gulf Coast areas with a 43-degree reading at Valdez, 42 in Kenai with 47 degrees recorded at Homer, near 50 for Kodiak Island, and 31 at Gulkana, with missing there is Northway. They had 29 degrees, 32 at Fairbanks, and a 36-degree reading at Talkeetna in the Susitna Valley. Up to the north a little bit there, 21 at Fort Yukon, and then much cooler through the Brooks Range with just 9 degrees this afternoon at Arctic Village, 18 at Anaktuvuk. Umiat had 19. Arctic coast ranging from the upper teens to as high as the mid-20s there, with 19 degrees at Atasuk, 18 at Point Ley, 25 at Point Hope, 31 in Kotzebue, and a 32-degree reading there at Shishmaref. On the other side of the peninsula, Nome had 38, and Gamble at 34 degrees. McGrath saw 33, and then milder 40s as you head down the Kuskokwim River at Bethel with 46. 48 there at Iliamna, and a 42-degree reading at Sparrowvon, with mid-40s for the Pribilofs, 47 there at Cape Newingham, and lower 40s over the western Aleutians, warmed into the mid to upper 40s here over the central areas. Nikolsky had 50 degrees, upper 40s to lower 50s there for the Alaska Peninsula, with Sand Point reaching 54 this afternoon, and King Salmon had 52. Lows for tonight in the 30s to lower 40s here for the southeast coast. Yakutat could drop down to 27. And teens from the eastern Tanana Valley northward, coolest areas along the North Slope and the Brooks Range with single numbers. Lower teens for the Arctic coast, 20s here over the Seward Peninsula, Kotzebue Sound. And then under milder east-southeasterly wind flow, lows anywhere from the lower 40s to upper 40s. This is in the case of Kodiak with 47 for the low, mid-40s for the Alaska Peninsula, and staying above 40 out over the Aleutians and the Bering Sea. And for highs tomorrow, mostly in the upper 40s to mid-50s here for the Panhandle, and mostly in the 40s for south central Alaska. Cooler in the Tanana Valley with mostly 30s there, and that'll extend west out across the Seward Peninsula. 45 to 50 down over Bristol Bay, and then it looks like teens and lower 20s again for the Arctic coast and North Slope areas, and 40s out over the Aleutians. Flying weather, VFR here for another day for the southeast coast up to about Yakutat, in over the southeast interior and westward to the Yukon Delta, but IFR spreading over Kodiak Island and up into southern Cook Inlet. That'll extend back to the west-northwest across the Aleutian Range and into Bristol Bay. Another area of IFR with the snow up there over the northeast interior, and marginal VFR from roughly the Tanana Valley northward to the Arctic coast, and that's slipping down through the Bering Strait to St. Lawrence Island, and IFR there over the Pribilof Islands up to Nunivak Island. Otherwise, much of the Bering Sea and Aleutians are looking at marginal conditions. Passes shaping up like this for Anaktuvuk, marginal VFR at times. Same forecast for Adigan, marginal. Lake Clark and Merrill, possible marginal VFR in the eastern approach, but through the pass and to the east, it'll be VFR. Rainy VFR, either entrance, and windy wide open as well with VFR flying. Isabel VFR, all of the eastern Alaska range will be VFR. Tanita looks to be VFR tomorrow. Definitely Portage also seeing VFR. And Chilkoot and White VFR for one more day. Freezing levels 2,000 feet here over St. Lawrence Island into the interior, lifting up to just south of Eagle there, and then kind of a gradient down to the North Gulf Coast where they're 8,000 feet. Even milder conditions down southwest of the Panhandle, and then about 2,000 to 4,000 feet here over the Bering Sea to 6,000 feet over the Alaska Peninsula and Bristol Bay. Icing, areas of light to isolated moderate rime icing up here over the northeast interior and portions of the North Slope, otherwise icing free here through the western and southern part of the state, but Bristol Bay could see some occasional widespread moderate rime icing cutting back across Kodiak Island. This all remaining off the Panhandle through tomorrow, but that'll shift inland tomorrow night, and then areas of icing possible here across the Pribilofs and much of the Aleutians. Upper level wind flow chart still showing for tomorrow, ridging right up through this area. Again, that's going to keep the southeast coast and interior dry, but southeasterly flow into south central Alaska at about 70 knots. The northern branch here cutting across the Arctic coast at 80 to 120 knots. And for 9,000 feet, there's those southeast winds here right along the coast at 30 knots into the North Gulf Coast, much lighter over the southeast interior. And then quite an area of northeast winds from the eastern Arctic coast, picking up speed here across the Yukon Delta and Norton Sound, 30 to 35 knots, reaching 50 knots out over the Bering Sea. Easterlies at 50 also coming into Kodiak Island, but much lighter over the Alaska Peninsula. Western Aleutians, 35 to 40 knot winds right out of the northeast. And 3,000 foot flow, much the same. The northeast winds all the way from the Arctic coast coming down, but quite stronger, or much stronger here over the Bering Sea, 35 to 40 knots. And then from about Atka eastward, much lighter with this broad area low pressure over the Alaska Peninsula. So pretty light winds up the peninsula, but a narrow band of pretty strong easterlies at 55 knots across Kodiak Island, up to 45 knots there across Bristol Bay. And the winds markedly increase here off the southeast coast, 15 to 20 knots in over the Panhandle, lighter yet over western Canada. Turbulence beginning to develop here along the southeast coast, but the moderate stuff staying off the coast there, but right in across Kodiak Island. Possible severe turbulence below about 4,000 or 5,000 feet here from Fognak Island across the Aleutian Range in northern Bristol Bay. Moderate chop for much of the southwest coast right up to the Bering Strait areas, and then possible severe turbulence there northwest of the Pribilofs, but pretty much turbulent free here for the Alaska Peninsula on out to Atka, possibly Adak. And after Hangar Flying, I'll be back with a look at the marine forecasts.
Good evening. I'm Harry Keeling, and on behalf of the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation and Alaska Public Media, welcome to Hangar Flying. Our guest this evening is Dr. Marcel Dion. Marcel was on our program a couple of months ago, and he has been the FAA regional flight doc for since early this year, and we talked about some of his background, and we talked about some of his ideas and some of the things he's concerned with. But I've asked him back tonight to talk about a special event that's coming up. Marcel, welcome back.
It's good to be here.
So on November 21st, we're going to have our fall Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation fall seminar. That's a Saturday, the 21st. And we're very fortunate to have enticed one of your colleagues in the FAA, a phenomenal speaker who I've heard. He's going to come up here, and you two are going to put together a program. But let me turn it over to you. Talk about CAMI, where Dr. Mel's coming from. Talk about him a little bit and talk about the program.
Yes, sir. Thanks. CAMI is short for Civil Aeronautic Medical Institute. It's the education and research facility that the FAA has been in place since 1961. They do things along human factors, as well as educate both pilots and air traffic controllers, aviation medical examiners. It's a big institution in Oklahoma City.
And the chief?
The chief, the director is Dr. Melchior Antuniano, also known as Dr. Mel. And Dr. Mel is, as you indicated, is a world-renowned, world-class speaker, very knowledgeable in aerospace medicine, very dynamic speaker, and very effective and entertaining. He's done over 700 conference presentations throughout the world, 38 countries. He's got over 60 publications to his name. He's been around for a long time, but certainly well worth going in and listening to Dr. Mel. And
he is a spellbound binding speaker. Do you have an idea? Have you guys worked out some of the topics that you might be talking about?
We have. Some of the topics that Dr. Mel is going to cover, and I'll help out with one of those, having to do with pilot fatigue in civil aviation. But some of the other topics that Dr. Mel will speak about are current trends in aerospace medicine and technologies, particularly the human factors element in the cockpit. The effects of pilot exposure to lasers in flight is another topic that he'll present. Current trends in aerospace medicine research as well, down at CAMI with the FAA.
Well, I know that the program that will be great, and I appreciate your help putting it together. I really appreciate Dr. Mel, who's a very busy man, taking time to come up here. And what I really would like to be able to do, and we'll talk more about this as we plan in detail his visit, I'd like to get him a flight depending on what the condition of the water is, whether it's frozen or liquid. We'll see if we can't get him either a float ride or a an off airport ride or something. Because I know he's a incredible advocate for aviation, and I'd like to be able to show him some of the things we do up here in Alaska.
I'm sure he'll look forward to it and certainly enjoy it.
So thanks very much for your help on that. And appreciate you being on the program tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Ladies and gentlemen, again, what we're talking about here is our fall safety seminar. The Safety Foundation tries to put on 2 seminars a year. The spring float seminar, which is usually in April, and the fall safety seminar. And the topics vary, but we're very fortunate in having Dr. Mel come up from CAMI. He really is a world-class speaker, and you all are going to have the opportunity to hear him. And as always, there's no charge. It's put on by the Safety Foundation. But I would add that the Safety Foundation is member sponsored, and we basically do what we do on a shoestring, and it's all because of your membership dues, which are a meager $35 a year or $110 a year for corporate. But with that, we can bring speakers up here, as long as they're willing to pay for it. But we have the safety seminars. We give out 3 scholarships. We have a newsletter, and of course we have Hangar Flying twice a week. So ladies and gentlemen, when you get that letter in the mail from us asking for you to renew, please do so. And if you're not a member already, go to our website, aasfonline.org, and there's a membership there. And until next time, keep in mind November 21st, but until next time, fly safe.
Welcome back. Well, today's sea ice analysis looking like this. Some young and new ice here of Kotzebue Sound, and also from Point Hope right up the coastline here, and ice expanding northward here off the eastern and central Arctic coast, and then this heavier pack ice expanding southward. And this zone here is forecast to continue to fill in over the next 4 or 5 days. And the ice edge here for the Chukchi Sea, that's forecast to advance southward and westward about 20 nautical miles through Saturday. And looking at the marine forecast, southeast winds 30 knots for the entire coastline there, except the north coast looking at easterly winds, northerlies 15 to 20 knots for the northern and central inside waters, but southeast at 15 for Clarence Strait. And for Wednesday, not a lot of change here. In fact, south to southeast winds along much of the Arctic, or much of the southeast coast here. Seas running 11 to 15 feet, and southeast winds pretty brisk there across Clarence Strait, with small craft advisories also for Stevens Passage, and Northern Lynn Canal northerlies at 15 with just 3-foot seas. And for the North Gulf Coast, we've got gale warnings 35 knots, pick up to 45 knots here for the Barren Islands, and actually 45 to 50 knot winds for Shelikof Strait back into Kamishak Bay. Easterlies at 40 for Kodiak Island. Gale warnings out south of the Forelands for Cook Inlet, and small craft advisories to the north. And for Wednesday, northerlies here, northern Cook Inlet at about 20 knots, increasing to 30 knots, 35 knots for Kamishak Bay, and then small craft advisories for Shelikof Strait. Winds drop down to 20 knots, Kodiak Island there, and for the North Gulf Coast and the Barrens, easterlies at 25 to 30 knots, with seas running 14 to 16 feet. And for the Alaska Peninsula, 15 to 20 knot easterlies there, with seas on the Pacific side up to 18 feet. Small craft advisories for Bristol Bay. And then for Wednesday, still looking at easterlies at 25 there for Bristol Bay. Northeast, southwest of Kodiak Island, and then becoming southerly here for the Alaska Peninsula and northeast on the Bering Sea side. For the eastern Aleutians, east to southeast winds 15 to 20 knots with 7 to 12 foot seas. Central Aleutians, north to northwest 20 to 30 knots there, and northerlies or northeasterlies 40 knots here, so good gale force winds west of Adak all the way to Shemya with those seas 18 to 22 feet. And for Wednesday, still got the gales here over the western Aleutians and northerlies 35 knots for the central Aleutians, east to southeast 15 to 20 knots for the Fox Islands. And for the southwest coast, south of the Nunivak Island, easterlies at 30 knots, gales north of the island right up across St. Lawrence Island. Almost a storm here for St. Matthew Island in the northern Bering Sea, and a good northeast wind at 35 for the Pribilofs. Those drop down a little bit, but still on the brisk side there for the St. Paul and St. George area. Northerlies of 40 knots from the northern Bering Sea, gales from St. Lawrence Island down to Nunivak Island with small craft advisories to the south. And for the Arctic coast, freezing spray here for the central and eastern coast with east and northeast winds at about 15, then heavy freezing spray from Wales up to Cape Beaufort, north to northeast at 30 knots there, and northeast 20 for the western coast. And the outlook for Wednesday, easterlies at 15 with 2 to 3 foot seas for the eastern coastline there. Then from the central coast, northeast, picking up to 20 knots on the western coast. And then still those small craft advisories and heavy freezing spray warnings there for the area from, again, Wales all the way up to Cape Beaufort. And looking at tonight again, pretty good conditions here over the southeast interior and panhandle. A chance of snow up over the northeast interior and to a lesser extent to the west. Rain and wind Kodiak Island into Bristol Bay becoming showery over the Aleutians, and low pressure hangs back here over the central and western Aleutians, eastern Aleutians, so pretty wet conditions there, but lighter winds except out to the west. Wet windy conditions across Kodiak Island and Bristol Bay. Partly sunny here, southeast interior, south central Alaska, increasing clouds and wind along the southeast coast, some snow up over the northeast interior, and more rain for the southeast coast the next day.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.